Welcome to Almanac North. I'm Mari Hewitt.
And I'm Brett Scott. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we're sitting down with St. Louis County Sheriff Gordon Ramsay to discuss his role in local government operations.
We're also hearing from a Northland guide in this week's sneak peek of No Filter.
That's all coming up, but first we begin this evening with some headlines. The recent wildfires and evacuation orders forced Fairbanks Township to cancel its local Board of Appeal and Equalization meeting, originally set for May the 14th. With not enough time to reschedule, the St. Louis County Assessor's Office has set up an alternate appeal process for property owners who want to dispute their 2025 estimated market value or classification. We also want to note fire damage won't affect 2025 assessments, but tax relief may be available. You can visit stlouiscountymn.gov/assessor for more information on how to get started.
Minnesota health officials are launching the Stay Cool Minnesota campaign on May 30th to raise awareness about the dangers of extreme heat, now the deadliest weather hazard in the U.S. The campaign urges Minnesotans to stay hydrated, stay informed, and stay cool, especially during heat waves. Vulnerable groups like children, older adults, and outdoor workers are most at risk. The campaign runs through Labor Day and includes resources at mn.gov/heat. Governor Walz has also declared May 30th as Extreme Heat Awareness Day.
Construction of a new J-turn at Highways 169 and 25 in Great Scott Township begins on Monday, June the 2nd. Traffic on Highway 169 will be reduced to one lane in each direction, and Highway 25 will detour through the median. The project, expected to be wrapped up by early August, aims to improve safety at one of St. Louis County's riskiest intersections, where 7 crashes, including 2 fatalities, have occurred since 2014. For updates, visit engage.stlouiscountymn.gov.
On this week's Making It Up North, meet James Ellis, a landscape painter with a unique eye for detail.
And that's the neat thing about painting, is that wherever you start and wherever you think you're going with a painting sometimes changes. And well, I shouldn't say sometimes, it changes a lot. And sometimes you get to a point where you just don't like what you've done, and you wind up taking one of these little tools and you scrape off your paint and you start over. And when you do that, it's pretty cool, because the next thing you see once you've scraped paint off is you see all these shadows, and you start to realize, oh, that could be that, or I could paint that, or that looks like that. And it's incredible how that image appears just because you decided you didn't like what you'd done before. Hi, my name is James Ellis. I am a landscape oil painter here in Duluth, Minnesota. I was working full-time at a job here in Duluth. I was injured, wasn't able to do my normal work anymore, and I wound up being at home all the time. And I'll say driving my wife crazy. And she encouraged me to get into something that I could be productive at, because being at home all the time just wasn't really fun, and it wasn't good for me. So she started encouraging me to go to an art class that she had attended. And so reluctantly, after a few nudges from her, I decided to give it a try. And I went and I enjoyed it, and kind of started being a little hobby for me. And the next thing you know, I'm starting to paint a lot. And I just found it peaceful, relaxing. A lot of my friends and family started telling me, you're really good. You're good. You could make a living at this. And I'm like, no. I remember the first painting that I sold. It was called Into the Woods. And I actually sold it to a couple here in Duluth who have become kind of a collector of some of my art from time to time, which is very humbling in itself. What I remember about that was basically being in shock that I had sold it. I didn't go into art. I didn't become an artist to sell. I mean, that was never even on my mind. I didn't really even think about that. But then it started to happen, and that first sale kind of propelled me to think, oh, well, maybe I could do some other things here with my art. And so that's what has transpired. I think the freedom it gives me, it takes me away from the daily, it frees my mind up. It creates peace. It gives me a creative aspect. I mean, because art is emotional, it's physical, it's, spiritual, and it helps me to put all those things down on a piece of canvas and really show people what it is that I like about art, and it helps me to put all that onto canvas. The greatest fear I have as an artist when I'm working on a painting is to get it exactly where I want it, and then to start adding the detail and the final details, and all of a sudden I feel like I've messed the whole thing up. Oh, my favorite painting that I ever did is Paper White, and it is just a simple, basic painting that is a fall scene, and it has birch trees. One of my favorite subjects to paint is birch trees. And, I try to incorporate birch trees in a lot of my paintings. If you look at my work, you'll see birch is a very popular topic for me. The other thing that I try to do with my art is I try to be a preservationist. So preserving the past, because some of the things that I painted, don't even exist anymore. They've fallen into the lake, or they've worn away, so it's really important for me too to document places and sites and nature and natural things that maybe down the road won't exist anymore. So for me, preserving what we see now is just as important as seeing it now. So it started out really simply, but now it is my life. It's a full-time job for me, and it's really saved my life in a lot of ways, just because it's given me something that I can focus on and enjoy, and that's been the best thing about becoming an artist.
Such an attention to detail in
Yeah,
this.
he captures like the North Shore so beautifully.
I thought a few of them were photographs.
Yeah.
But they're paintings.
Beautiful detail. Beautiful.
I love it.
Well, next up on Venture North, May is Trauma Awareness Month, and our team met with injury prevention specialist Allison Nicholson to learn about the risks.
Hi, my name is Allison Nicholson. I work on the trauma floor at Essentia Health. I'm the injury prevention specialist here. Injury Prevention Month is a month where we recognize our trauma survivors, and so we're going into the summer months as our most riskier time of the year. And so we want to recognize that traumas are going to happen this summer, and we want to bring recognition to the fact that we can prevent them. We want to meet you out in the community. We want to prevent injuries from happening, and we want to recognize that some of those trauma survivors are getting better, but we only want to meet you in the community when prevention is our key. I've been in this role for a little over 10 years, and I've been a certified instructor for car seats for a little over 20 years. And so we've been educating a lot in the car seat world. And what our trends have shown is that we're really educating parents on how to properly install their car seats. And so our last few years have seen less children come into the emergency department because of car crashes. Parents are still getting into car crashes and still coming in having injuries, but their kiddos that are in the car with them are buttoned down correctly in car seats, and so we see less kids coming into the ED. I just can't go out and educate on whatever I would like to talk about. I have to educate on whatever we see data-driven coming into the hospital. So we are out educating at early childhood family education classes. We have a class here at Essentia once every other month. We do car seat events once a month in Cloquet, in Duluth, in Superior. We also helped, educate on the new laws that have come out that are extremely strict in Minnesota. We're the strictest state now for car seat laws, which is phenomenal. Not a lot of parents love that, or kids love that. But again, we have the strictest laws out there for a state. So if parents, I know that they're listening to this, I know that they're hearing us, and so these kids are honestly riding down the crash amazing, and so they're not needing to come into the ED because they're hurt. When I looked at the data this year and saw that there was less car crashes than years past, I haven't seen as many kiddos come in because of a car crash. It has to be following the trend. It has to be that parents are buttoning them down correctly and they're riding down the crash with their parents, and it's working. It's finally working. It's taken 20 years, but it's finally working. So that's what makes me happy. Parents are following the law, they're buttoning them in correctly, and even though they're getting into car crashes, it's working the right way.
Tonight, we're excited to share a segment from our new show, No Filter, which is a conversational interview series that explores the rich tapestry of Northern life through informal conversations with diverse, intriguing people from the region.
Each episode is bringing a fresh voice to the screen, focusing on the unique perspectives, personal journeys, and life experiences shaping the Northern community.
We will share a short sample of our conversation here on Almanac North, but we invite you to explore full episodes of No Filter on the PBS North YouTube channel. Full episodes will be available there soon.
Hi, I'm Kristen Bakke, and I'm the host of No Filter. We are in International Falls today. We can't wait to introduce you to an incredible person. We are so pleased to have Brad Crassaway on this week's episode of No Filter. Brad is the Director of Operations at Minnesota North College's Rainy River campus. He is also a fishing guide. Brad originally thought he'd be living in the Twin Cities, but found his way back to a rural community by choice. We are so excited to have Brad on No Filter today. Hi, Brad. Thank you so much for joining us on No Filter. Excited for you to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's talk a little bit about your background. You did not grow up in International Falls or in this area. So tell us where you grew up and sort of what led you here.
Sure, yep. Well, born and raised in Britt, Minnesota, Virginia, Minnesota, so they are in range. Went to high school there, went to the community college there, Mesabi Range College back then. Then met my wife, got married, then we moved to Winona. Went to Winona State University, got our undergrads there, got our masters there, and started our professional positions there. And yeah, went from there to Rochester, moved up to Inver Grove Heights, Minnesota in the Twin Cities. Thought that we were going to have to be there for however long, and we got really lucky when we were able to come up here to International Falls.
And you thought you were going to have to be in the Twin Cities area. How come?
So my wife's a therapist, and I was in higher ed. And we always thought in order to be able to get jobs in the same community that it's going to have to be in that Twin Cities area. But it was kind of a funny story, actually. So we were actually helping my friend look for houses in the suburbs around Inver Grove Heights because we all worked at Inver Hills Community College together. And the prices of the houses in cul-de-sacville were crazy. And I just never knew how expensive it was to live down there. And my wife and I, Danielle, we were going to be paid the same amount no matter where we lived in the state. And so we really started thinking like, all right, where do we want to raise a family? What do we want our lifestyles to be like? And that's when we started looking around. And so we kind of made a top 5 list, actually, of where in the state of Minnesota, because we wanted to stay in the state, we wanted to live. Winona was on that list. Grand Rapids was on that list. Ely was on that list. And International Falls was on that list. So those are like our top 5. and we saw positions were available up here. One here, it was Rainy River Community College back then, one at Northland Counseling Center for Danielle. We both applied, and we ended up getting job offers within a week of each other. And just by moving up here, we basically gave ourselves like $1,000 a month raise just by moving up here, just because of the lower cost of living. And this is where this is where we want to be. We like the outdoors, we like camping, we like fishing, we like hunting, and this has it all for us. Yeah, that was a pretty easy no-brainer for us. It was tough to leave the people at Edinburgh Hills, but they understood. They knew what was calling for us, and so we took advantage of it.
So you grew up in Britt,
Yep.
but attended Virginia
Yep.
schools. Talk a little bit about growing up on the Iron Range.
Yeah, so anybody that knows the Iron Range, it's a unique place to grow up. Everybody that knows that you're from the range treats you a little bit different, I would say. They have some expectations. I'm a ranger. Yep. That's what they say. And so they have some expectations of you in multiple different areas. So it's kind of fun. You kind of run with it a little bit. I got active into politics, for instance, and they have our get-together where they have name tags that says Born Ranger or Wannabe Ranger. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those, but it's fun. You just go with it, right? And so growing up on the range was very unique. I'm actually a 5th-generation Iron Ranger. In my family, there was 4 generations that were born in Virginia, and I'm the first generation not to work in the mine. So it's pretty incredible and to have that kind of a history. And so they came straight from Europe to the UP in Michigan, recruited to work on the Iron Range, and that's where they set roots and stayed there on the Iron Range. And so my family's still there. My dad worked at Mintech for 42 years. My grandpa retired from Erie. I mean, it's a long history on the Iron Range.
My dad was at Mintech for 40 years.
Yeah.
I bet, I'm going to ask him, I bet they knew each other.
They probably did.
Yes. So small world. So talk a little bit about, growing up on the Iron Range, were you looking to leave right away? What was your mindset as you're a senior in Virginia, getting ready to go out into the world?
Right. So when I was in 9th grade, I got really sick, like real sick. Then Virginia Hospital didn't know what I had. I was life flighted down to the Twin Cities. They diagnosed me with blastomycosis. I was in a drug-induced coma. I had a near-death experience. I wasn't supposed to make it. 20% lung capacity left. And just, I don't know if you know much about near-death experiences, but that changes you. Okay, so coming out of that, there was a lot of rehab. I had to relearn how to talk, how to walk. This is all when I was 15. And so coming out of that and jumping back into the high school atmosphere, if you will, with some of the expectations of who you were, and yet having just gone through this life-changing experience and trying to jump back into that, I was lost. I was a lost puppy dog for a long time. So I made it through graduating high school, had my first year or two at Mesabi Range, and it wasn't until a few close friends actually said that, hey, you've got some skills. We could use you to join our club. Like, we think you'd be a benefit to our group. And at that point, that was the first time that I'd ever been told by somebody that was close to me that I could contribute to something outside of, social stuff. And that I brought something to the table. And so just that little bit of empowerment is what sprung, growth and better grades and as active in that group, and got a little bit, kind of fell in love with politics for a little while and higher education, and all relating back to that hospital experience, which I knew that I was put on the earth, in my opinion, to help people in whatever way, place, shape, or form that I was in. So it was a hard thing to grasp when you're that young, but you kind of grow into it. And then, so whatever location or situation that I'm put in, that's my goal, is always to help others and kind of leave it better than you found it.
Our guest this week is St. Louis County Sheriff Gordon Ramsay. Sheriff Ramsay, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You have had a very busy spring, starting with some major wildfires, correct? Explain how your department, how you handled and kind of wrapped your hand around that.
Well, I think these are going to go down as historic fires. The amount of property loss, property damage is significant, and just sheer acreage. So a lot of it started with evacuations, because that fire moves so quickly, and working to keep people safe. And fortunately, as large as these fires have been and historic as they are, we haven't had any significant injuries or loss of life.
Oh, that's good to hear. And thankfully it's mostly out now, correct?
Correct. Yeah, just some burning stumps that they're working on, and for the most part, it's out. We are well over the hump, and I think we can quit holding our breath.
Yeah. Of course, St. Louis County is a very geographically vast area with urban centers like Duluth and rural areas. And you were police chief for many years. How do you take what you learned from being a chief in the city to applying it countywide, and how you manage the department?
Well, a lot of it's just leadership issues. Heck, I was 34 when I was promoted to the Duluth job. Obviously, I've learned a lot over the last almost 20 years. And, it doesn't really matter where you are. A lot of the issues are the same. Leading people, public safety is the same no matter where you are. I think the big difference is being an elected official as a sheriff versus an appointed official, like in Duluth, appointed by the mayor.
When it comes down to funding, what does that look like for your office from a state and more of a federal level?
Sure. Well, most of our money comes from the county tax base, right? It does not. We don't see a lot of federal grants. We get some traffic grants for traffic safety, but most of it is local tax base that funds us. So we do not see. There's many studies that show St. Louis County doesn't get what we give to the federal government back, and we certainly can say that from a law enforcement perspective, where we don't see a lot of that federal money for our services paid back.
Of course, the issue that plagues communities across the nation is drug use, fentanyl, meth. St. Louis County is not an exception. So what is the status right now of dealing with fentanyl overdoses, use, dealing? What is your department doing to combat that issue?
Yeah, well, it's still the number one reason for non-natural death in St. Louis County is overdose around fentanyl. So it's a significant issue for us. Fortunately, our overdoses have gone down last year over the year before. So we're seeing a decrease, but we still see a significant amount in the community despite the decrease in overdose deaths. Our overdoses are still very high, but the proliferation of Narcan, I think, has really helped. So we have 2 task forces in St. Louis County that work on drug enforcement. In Duluth, the Lake Superior Task Force, and then on the range, that's part of the Lake Superior Task Force. And we have significant resources, investigators that work there and that really focus on doing what they can to apprehend the dealers in our communities.
You mentioned enforcement. What about the education aspect of this to younger folks in our community?
Well, we're not seeing the education done like it used to be, right? As an 80s kid, they had Nancy Reagan. That was one of her big things and they scared the living daylights out of us back then to ever try drugs. And as a result, the year I graduated from high school was the lowest level of drug use among high school seniors. And what we're seeing now is increase in high schools. Marijuana, all kinds of drugs, pills, and we're not doing enough education. We want to get there before we get to the enforcement end.
And of course, drug use can also play a part in mental illness and mental health, something that in Duluth and in St. Louis County we've seen. What does your department do to help combat the mental health and the lack of resources and the need to police that?
Well, one thing I would like people to know is that we are seeing significant numbers of people that have drug-induced psychosis because of drug use, illegal drug use, and what it's doing to their brain chemistry. And in many cases, it's altering their brains forever. We're seeing it at the jail, we're seeing it on the streets, we're seeing it in 911 calls. It is significant for this county. So people need to know what's happening with a lot of these drugs to people in our community. And avoiding drugs at all costs is important. But we're putting a lot of resources into the enforcement end with these task forces, for example. And we are seeing still significant amounts coming into our communities through drug dealers that we're doing everything we can to combat.
We're heading into the nice warmer months. We all are excited for those. What are some tips that you have for each resident in the region as we enter summer? We're getting into the boating season, safety, all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, you know, one thing that comes off the top of my head is we've seen an increase in burglaries, particularly around Tower, Lake Vermilion area. As the weather warms up and people that maybe don't lock their doors or just leave their screen doors open or leave their windows open, we do see an increase in property crimes in the summer. Maybe leave their bikes outside. Again, along with drugs prevention with property crimes is the most important thing we can do. We want to prevent people from losing property, so be aware. You know, cameras have helped us catch a lot of criminals, prevents a lot. Those are tremendous. They're cheap now. They're easy to put up. I would encourage people to do that. And when it comes to water safety, life jackets. You know, the county has, since 1960, we've had like 700 drowning deaths. There's been less than 10 that drowned wearing life jackets. Those are significant numbers.
Wow.
So life jackets are important.
Great
Very
advice.
important.
Yes. Keep that in mind. Thank you, Sheriff Ramsay, for joining us. We
Nice
really
to see you
appreciate
guys.
it.
Thank
Yeah,
you for being
thanks.
with us. And that's it for this week's show. Go out and enjoy your weekend. I'm Brett Scott.
And I'm Maria Hewitt. Thank you for joining us. Good night.